Hey guys, this week was a quite busy one for me. I just came back from Austria where I was invited to the FAFGA, a fair for gastronomy and hospitality, to talk about the useful work with artificial intelligence in gastronomy, in hospitality, in the wine industry. And this was just a small part of, let's say, future trends in wine and gastronomy. There were talks about social media marketing, about sustainability, about new concepts and approaches in gastronomy. One was Culinary Meets Art by Sandra Scheidel, where you basically combine the world of art with the world of gastronomy, fine dining, and wine, a concept I really love, actually. And also some really interesting new business models. And I also had a chat with some people from the industry and learned that even though wine is still seen, or the gastronomy is still seen as very conservatively oriented business, there is also room for new approaches, for new trends, and they are really embracing technology and communication strategies. The week in the industry was a mix between huge investments in the region of Burgundy, some bad news, sad news around climate change and the severe conditions that come along with it, and some crazy news about a marathon that took place that is basically concerned about running and drinking in parallel, and space-aged wine. Have fun with the episode. Welcome to the Pinot and Pixel podcast episode number 194, and this week dominated by climate change and the results of it. And this was also feelable for me personally and for the organizers of the fair in Innsbruck, because there were way less attendance than expected, because especially Austria was struggling with severe floods and the impacts on the public transportation system. So either the people weren't able to come or they stayed at home to fight against the floods. And it was not only Austria that was affected, basically it was the countries along the river Danube, so Romania and Austria, and Hungary is waiting for the first floods during this week or maybe next week. Fortunately for the wine industry, only few vineyards were influenced by the floods or even destroyed by the floods. There was more impact on the public transportation system on houses, and of course also just everyday life. Restaurants were flooded. People stayed home, as I said, to defend their house, their restaurant, their bar against the floods. I tried to reach a friend in Romania if everything is okay. He hasn't answered so far, so fingers crossed for everybody that has been affected by the floods. They were caused by a huge amount of rain over the last 10 to 14 days. Fortunately for the wine industry, they managed to bring 40 to 50% of the grapes to the wineries. And the weather forecast for the next 2 weeks says that there will only be a small amount of rain, and you can calculate with drier conditions. So in the end, hopefully there won't be a big disease pressure in the vineyards. The people that have been affected by the floods currently caring about their business or their private homes. And Hungary, unfortunately, hasn't seen the floods. They will arrive in Budapest within the next days. We hope for few impacts on the people, on the industry, and on the businesses. I mean, there have been floods over the last 20 years in Germany, in Austria, and Central Europe, basically everywhere where you have big rivers that are crossing vineyards, cities, and fields in the agricultural sector, due to the fact that we have dealt and also structured them in a way that nature is not possible to deal with it alone anymore. We have those influences on our cities and our businesses. And the interesting thing is that maybe the severe conditions are not heavier than when we have a look at the past 20 years, the problem is that they occur way more often. So climate change is happening. The impact on our everyday life and the severe conditions come in a frequency that should bring us to a point where we say we definitely have to do something against it. And unfortunately, even if we would start right now in changing almost everything we made wrong over the last 20 to 40 years, the impact will be feelable probably in 30 to 40 years. And maybe this is a problem for people because they cannot feel an immediate positive switch. And this is maybe why we struggle in changing some things in our everyday life, because every one of us is able to change something, having a positive impact on climate change, using less plastic, buying more regional, buying less online. But especially with the fact that we are very comfortable with all the trends and the development we have experienced so far, it's sometimes a bit tough for ourselves to break out of our comfort zone and do something differently, especially when this would mean a bit more effort for ourselves and a change in our everyday life. And it's not only the floods. When we have a look at Portugal, Portugal is currently seeing huge wildfires, destroying vineyards, destroying homes, destroying wineries. And it's the second time after 2017. And many vineyards and wineries in the area of Vinho Verde have been impacted by that. Firefighters are still struggling extinguishing the fires. So fingers crossed also for the area of Portugal. Also an impact of the changing weather conditions, very, very dry weather. And then in the end, you just need, I don't know, a flinch of a little spark to enlight fire, to enlight a forest. And then it's quite tough to stop it because everything is just dry. And we talked about that in California, in Priorat, and some regions also struggle with the availability of water to fight the fires. And this is, for example, why the firefighters of Portugal, they're mainly concerned about, of course, saving people, trying to extinguish the fires, but they don't focus on the houses. So if you have an agricultural building, firefighters won't prioritize it, and the outcome is that you see many winemakers, such as Florian Tonello, for example, who is fighting on his own. And this could also get dangerous because maybe in one moment you are realizing that you are not able to fight the fire anymore, but it is too late to escape. It's also very, very dangerous for people. There are institutes trying to figure out what could have a positive impact on climate change, on the conditions. And one of those institutes is the Hochschule Geisenheim, so the University of Geisenheim. And they recently published some results of a study regarding solar, so photovoltaic systems in vineyards. And they have discovered that there are many positive impacts, influence. There is a big positive influence on winemaking, on nature, and also in the future, long term, on the climate. And for viticulture itself, you have kind of a roof. So the panels, they act like a roof above the vines. So you have sun protection, you have shadowing, you have a reduced soil evaporation, because it basically is like a cover. It prevents sunburn and it mitigates the damages from late frost, because you have kind of a unnatural protection against the cold air coming from above and just, pulling down. And the article also mentioned that they could be kind of a replacement of hail protection nets. And I mean, of course, in the end, you protect your vines from hail, but I guess only few solar panels are able to resist bigger hailstones. I guess it depends on the region where you install those solar panels. Maybe, I don't know, it is 200 to 500 euro to replace one panel. And the wine you get out of your grapes that might be damaged by hail are way more expensive than replacing the panels. But this should be Burgundy or Champagne or so. What is also really interesting is if you have installed solar panels in your vineyard, they can also be a protection against wetter conditions. So you will probably have less wet conditions under the surface, so a lower disease pressure. And I mean, there's many options for using solar panels in the vineyard, and maybe this is the future. I don't know what the installation costs might be, but in the end, the outcome was way more positive than negative. And in addition, of course, you might have a winery or at least a building that could work 100% independently. So imagine a self-sufficient winery in the vineyards, just working with solar panels and fueling lamps, machines, maybe even offering the possibility to recharge your electric car, your tractor, whatever. Would be interesting to see what the installation and of course also the maintenance costs might be of those PV systems. I'll put the link in the show notes, and if you're interested in a deeper dive on that, just have a look at Hochschule Geisenheim, the University of Geisenheim's website. The next topic brings us to Spain, where again, a government, in that case the Galician government, authorizes crisis distillation. The region of Ribeira Sacra has suffered from many things over the last years. I mean, COVID was one of them, and due to the fact that are not the most well-known DO in Spain and also in Europe, they struggled in selling their wine. So the cellars filled up and they struggled to get rid of the bottles. The cellars were too full, even though the harvest wasn't as productive as expected. They still struggled to sell their wines, had an overproduction, and right now the government offered crisis distillation for some wineries. You are able to receive 4,000 euros per hectare. So in the end, it's probably about €1 per liter, but you have to bring it to the facility on your own. I don't know if this is saving your company if you're really struggling in selling your wine. At least it might cover the costs you had for growing the vines, but generally Ribeira Sacra is a quite difficult region. Just to give you some facts, most of the area is located on steep slopes, so it's quite tough to work in the vineyard. Many tasks are done by hand and basically you need a lot of effort. The average grower in the region is 65 years old, and Ribeira Sacra has lost nearly 700 hectares to abandonment in the past decade. 700 hectares. And right now the government has dedicated €2 million to fight vineyard loss and €2.4 million to fund the crisis distillation. I don't know if this will solve the problem long term. At least it's maybe a good cover, a good bridge for some companies to switch their business model. Sometimes, especially in the wine business, in the wine industry, I have the feeling that people still think every company can survive, and sometimes also it's kind of a stubbornness. No, it won't have an effect on my business, and even though I'm struggling to sell more wines now, I have to do some discounts and traditional stuff, and it will work out. It won't. And this was also a part of the future trends in gastronomy, because not every restaurant, and same with wine, not every winery will survive the next 10 to 20 years. Times have changed, especially how people act, how people interact, social gathering. There was a switch from just, going to restaurants once a week to maybe once a month or twice a month because you can't afford it anymore. It became more expensive. More and more people love to have social gatherings at home because it's cheaper and it's more like the private feeling, the environment you need. Same with wine. People are drinking less. Maybe they're drinking better. So there is a switch either to very cheap stuff just to get drunk or to the more expensive stuff. And all this shows that there is another future coming, a change in behavior, a change in our drinking behavior, in our eating behavior, and we have to react on that. And it won't be possible, even with the help of government, to save all the businesses. And if you are smart enough right now to realize that you have a problem with your business, you either have to adapt to the future trends. So going to social media, even if you don't like it, changing something in your portfolio, maybe offering products with a lower alcohol level, not sitting around 15 or 16 alcohol anymore because it has been like that over the last 50 years. Or maybe switching to another business or just adapting another one. I know some wineries that found their way to agriculture or doing kind of a mixture in between. So you have an agricultural product such as, I don't know, corn or oat or wheat. And in addition, you have your small winery. Of course, it's a lot of effort, but we definitely have to overthink our way we do business in restaurant, in gastronomy, and in the wine industry. And of course, I mean, talking about trends, we don't have to follow every single trend because some trends are a bit crazy. And one of them is dating in supermarkets. I don't know where this trend came from, but it got really popular when people on TikTok started talking about it. There is a supermarket chain in Spain where when you come between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. and you put a pineapple in your basket, everybody knows that you are there for dating. So singles all around the area, they come to the supermarket between 7 and 8 p.m. looking for other people they feel attracted to and they want to get a connection with. And the sign saying, "I'm single and I'm looking for somebody," was a pineapple. So you put a pineapple in your basket and then you wait until somebody says, "Hey, I've seen your pineapple. Want to go for a coffee or so?" And of course, on the one hand, it got so big, it's kind of a fruit flash mob that even the police had to come and just try to manage the huge amount of people so you don't get the problem with mass panics or so. And secondly, there were so many people that it was hard to differentiate between the people who are really looking for serious relationships, so Tinder in real life, or that are more looking for the fun part, so also Tinder in real life. So they started using different signs. For example, if you had a pineapple and a package of lentils, people knew that you were looking for a relationship. And maybe with a banana or a cucumber or an avocado, it meant, "I'm just looking for fun." I don't know what to say about this. I mean, people get more creative when it comes to dating. 20 years ago, you went to a bar, to a restaurant, to a discotheque and said something like, "Hi, my name is Alex. I saw you from over there and you look kind of nice and I just wanted to say hello and wanted to invite you for a drink." Then we have the swiping area, and right now it's getting back to supermarkets saying, "Oh, I realized that you have a very cute pineapple in your basket." So if you're single, if you live in Spain, just head over to the supermarket between 7 and 8 p.m. and look for something new. The next news is more concerned about marketing and about bigger brands. This is the whole next section. And the first one is about a very successful product during the US Open, served during the US Open. And the brand behind is Grey Goose. If you don't know it, it's a vodka brand, it's the spirits brand. And it is actually the most successful drink during the US Open this year. This was a video on Instagram where they told that they sold more than 100,000 drinks of that. It was 12.65 million in revenue just from a single cocktail. It's absolutely crazy because it's more than the amount that you're able to win as a man and a woman combined. And of course, many celebrities adapted to that. Taylor Swift was spotted with this. And basically, it's just vodka and juice. It just went crazy. Can you imagine? You're a brand that is able to sell the products during a sports event. And then you earn 12.6 million because you were smart enough to establish not only the drink itself, but also the branding, because the fruits, the balls that are served with it look like tennis balls. And we have talked about that several times. Of course, there is a big relation between sports events and alcohol. And this is the US. And there is a different rule. There are different rules. There are different approaches of the combination of brands and sports. And it's not forbidden like it was during the Olympics. So Grey Goose saw a rise and has become very, very successful over the last 2 weeks. In parallel, Heineken, we talked about that in episode 186. Heineken launched their Love Edition for the US Open, and they won two very, very famous players during the US Open, Morgan Riddle, the female, and Taylor Fritz on the male side. And they advertised the Heineken 0.0, pushing the moderation in drinking behavior. And it's an attempt of, especially Heineken, but maybe the US Open is also involved, of moving people towards moderate drinking, and of course also to maybe changing the well-established drinking culture related to sports. Meaning you can still enjoy your favorite sport, your favorite event, and drink something, but it doesn't have to be the booze version of it. And Heineken was really pushing into that. There were several articles on the internet. This one is from Nylon, and I mean, Morgan Riddle said, because we are excited and we want to push this way further. And who else could it be than us as sportsmen, as sportswomen? Because we are kind of a role model and we should push this development. While sportsmen and women are trying to push moderate drinking in the US, in the UK, there was a ban of a very, very famous brand from the shelves. There is a wine from Italy that used the branding of the Hello Kitty brand, so basically a brand known for children's products, for a wine. And somebody discovered that bottle and said, isn't it a bit strange that you see alcohol sold under a children's toy brand? How can that possibly be legal? And of course, then they checked it, and in the end, they had to remove the bottle from the shelves. And I mean, it's a beautiful design, and of course it reminds you of your favorite brand when you grew up with Hello Kitty, and it's maybe even the wine for your mother, for your grandmother, or whatever. But of course, in addition, the combination of an alcoholic brand with your favorite children's toy character feels kind of awkward to me, and the Italian brand tried to explain what they had in their mind. It still feels weird to see that, and it has been banned. It was a Pinot Noir. I can't tell you anything about the quality of the product, but talking about marketing and the approach behind, it feels correct to ban it from the shelves. There are brands that have this correlation with young people, with children, with young adults, and with older adults, of course. So we can talk about a brand, maybe The Simpsons or so, where you say even the context of the episodes of the movies is more focused on the older generations rather than children, even though it's still a comic brand. But Hello Kitty, it's for children. We jump over to France, and this week was the week of announcements for big investments in Burgundy. The first in a row was the co-founder of Alibaba, Zhou Tsai, who invested in Burgundy Vineyards with some other colleagues in an association that has bought into Côte d'Or in some Burgundy vineyards. They don't sell under their own brands. They basically sell their grapes to a cooperative or to a négociant, but they are invested in vineyards. It's an undisclosed sum. I can tell you anything about that. In parallel, LVMH published that they bought 1.3 hectares in Côte d'Or for $15.5 million. So very, very rich people, very big brands are investing in Burgundy, driving the interest, the visibility of Burgundian vineyards, driving, of course, also the prices. And I mean, there is two sides of it. It brings capital into the region, into the industry. It brings more visibility, especially when we talk about big brands such as LVMH, and this hasn't been their first investment in the area. And on the other hand, you have the problem that it could drive prices. And I still have the question in my head, is this the right direction? And I mean, if you try to bring wines from very expensive regions to the market in an affordable area, still sitting at higher quality, and this could be a case in Champagne, in Bordeaux, in Burgundy, and we've seen that several times. LVMH might be able to do that. But on the other hand, seeing investors, especially from Asia, investing in wineries, and we've seen that in Bordeaux, and right now it's also in Burgundy, it could also have a bad influence on the reputation or just on the prices, driving the prices way up. And we all know that Burgundy already has a price problem. Bordeaux had as well. And Right now, especially this year, they tried to change that with a reduction in the prices during the Entrepreneur campaign. It wasn't that successful, and hopefully Burgundy will realize we will also have a problem in the future if we don't change something with our prices and with our reputation. Nevertheless, both of them invested in Burgundy. At the moment, we can't see the influence on that. We can't feel it. We can't even get a feeling for it. But we'll see in the next 2 to 3 years what will happen to Burgundy. And maybe they will have a change, especially in the pricing as well, like we've seen that in Bordeaux this year. Talking about fine wine, high reputation in the wine industry, the German Wine Institute partners up with the Institute of Masters of Wine. And this is actually big news for the wines of Germany. The German Wine Institute basically is responsible for the marketing of German wine, of the development, the wine regions, and everything that comes along with it. And they have been offering the WSET courses up to level 2, I guess, over the last years. And right now, with the partnership, they will be able to also offer more courses on that. Currently, there's only few partners in the world. One of them is the Wine Academy in Rust in Austria, and the German Wine Institute right now is another one. And of course, it's a big thing for them, and hopefully it also brings some new impulses into the German Wine Institute, some fresh air, because just my personal feeling is that the German Wine Institute still struggles a bit with a modern kind of communication and following the trends we should follow. There is so many things we could talk about, but this would be a separate episode. I really hope for the German Wine Institute and also for German wine that we will discover that we should change the way we communicate and also maybe the way we talk about wine and the way we produce wine. Germany is one of the few wine countries, of the big wine countries in the world, where we consume way less regional wine than foreign international wine. And I mean, we really do have good wine in Germany. Maybe few people know, maybe we still struggle with the reputation of the 70s. There is so many reasons, and we should definitely do something against it in a modern way. And hopefully the partnership with the Institute of Masters of Wine will bring some fresh air into our country. Fingers crossed. So right now, it's time for the crazy news of the week. Spectrum Wine made a post on Instagram talking about a dozen bottles of fine French wine that just came back from space. They aged in space for 12 months. And of course, afterwards, they compared it to the original version that has been stored on planet Earth. And they discovered that the aging process was way faster in space. So the tannins were more integrated, they softened, they had faster development in the aroma profile. Jane Anson, one of the most influential wine critics on the planet, was part of the study and of the tasting as well. And I mean, it's super interesting to see what changes with the impact of gravity, of light, and pressure. My first question when I read this after, oh, crazy, was, do we really need that? I mean, it's super cool to be able to do research in space, but we just talked about the problems we're currently facing regarding climate change. Shouldn't we focus more on problems we have on planet Earth rather than expanding not existing problems to space? I don't know. We live in a crazy time, don't we? And last but not least, last week, I guess one of the craziest marathons on the planet was organized for the 38th time in history. They started in 1985, and it's a French marathon where runners are fueled by wine, by oysters, and by foie gras. It's called the Marathon du Médoc. It takes place in Bordeaux, and you have 42 kilometers to run with 21 stations where they serve you wine, oysters, local food, foie gras. And the first time I heard of it was in 2008, and it has always been a dream participating in that. And I mean, there are some funny things when you read the registration. They usually say, this is not a marathon for your personal best. This is a marathon for having fun and enjoying culture, enjoying nature, and enjoying a good glass of wine. And my thoughts always have been, what do you do with your body running 42 kilometers, which is really, really tough, even with training, but then adding up alcohol. I don't know if the people spit. And usually, I mean, they made some interviews with people that took part saying, yeah, I mean, it's just a small amount of alcohol, but it still feels kind of weird. It's a huge cultural event. I mean, people dress up. There is always a topic. I can't remember last year's topic, but this year, of course, was related to the Olympics. Faites-vous jeu. So make your games, play your games, whatever. And yeah, people dress up like whatever they want to and have fun in running, or at least participating in a marathon. I guess it's more like walking. So, but when you think, okay, right now let's start at 7 a.m., we have 12 hours. No, you don't. After 6.5 hours, you have to cross the finish line. Otherwise, you are disqualified. But guess what? I guess nobody would care. If you have had your favorite wines at the first 5 or 6 stations after 10K and they tell you you cannot run further anymore, okay. 8,500 people. Isn't that crazy? The participants, 8,500? That's a big one, actually. You can't compare it to a city marathon of Boston where you have 50 to 60,000 people, but this is more focused on sports, and the Marathon du Médoc is more focused on having fun, having a good time together, and yeah, enjoying a good cup of wine in the vineyards. Yeah, this is it, guys. If you want to run this weekend, the weather forecast for Central Europe is quite good. So enjoy your weekend. Have a good run. Have a good glass of wine if you want to. And see you on Wednesday with our next episode. Ciao, ciao.